Hi, this is Alan with the folks at Hope Tech. I'm going to run through our crash course again, but this time we'll take one of the characters that Sam has drawn and import him into our game. So the character that Sam drew was Nike, and he drew him in Inkscape, and so we'll take that and export it out and dump it in and replace the existing character in Stencil. So one of the first things you'll notice with Inkscape is File, Document Properties. You want to make sure your dimensions are right for the character you're drawing. So for ours, we'll be using 32 pixels. So we'll switch also the unit here to pixels. I'm just going to switch it over. So 32 by 32 pixels. Now, and then you'll see you have the right size here for the drawing. So we'll just go ahead and open the one that Sam created. And just use all the defaults. Let me close this old one. Oops, close it up. I'll open Sam's here. And it's already set to the right dimensions. But if you're creating a new one, you'll want to look into that. Make sure you're using the right dimensions. Now the other thing is we'll use the layers here. If this isn't up for you, click on Layer and Layers, and then that'll bring up your Layers window. We'll also be looking at the Export window. You get to there by choosing File, Export PNG Image, and then sometimes they'll be back to back. Let's see if I can figure out how to. Yeah, so now Layers is here, Export PNG is here. We kind of want them both open so we can switch back and forth between them. Now, the way Sam created it is there's different layers for each of the different characters. So you'll want to turn one of the layers off, turn the other one on to switch back and forth to the different images that have been created. And then once we have one, what we'll want to do is export it. So in your export window here, just leave it on page, and it's set to 32 by 32. And we'll choose where we want to export it to. So we'll go ahead. I already have that. And let's go to the desktop, and I'll create a Hope Tech 2. And then I just want to call it the same thing that our layer is named. So I'll do that. Call it Nike-R for right facing. And then it hasn't actually done the export yet. That's just set the file name. We hit this button here, and that'll actually do the export. So now we can open up that folder, and there we can see our Nike-R. So now what we'll do is we'll switch back over to Stencil. Let's open our crash course game or Nike game. So here's our level 1, and we'll switch over to our actor types, and our main actor, Noni. We'll go ahead and we'll take that idle right, and you see here the different frames. What we're going to do is add a frame, and you want to make sure the scale is set to 1x, otherwise it'll shrink it. It'll be scaling it. So we'll choose our image. I gotta get over to Hope Tech 2 folder. I'll choose idle right. And now you'll notice it's flipping back and forth. It's doing an animation here between these two real quick. So it looks odd. So this first one I'm going to want to remove the frame. And now it's only the right character. So I can go ahead and save it. And I'll go ahead and test the game or switch back and test the scene. And you already see it's replaced the image here. Move this so you can see it. So there's our character. Now as soon as we start moving, or we're idling left, it's back to the other character as soon as we jump. So what we'll do now is I'll go through in Inkscape, and I'll go ahead and export all the other layers simply by turning one off, turning the next one on, and then I'll go ahead and change the export name to this time R clockwise 45, and then hit export. I'll go ahead and do all the other ones, and I'll probably try and zoom or fast forward this part of the video. Okay, now I'll double check that. I should have all of them exported here. I think I did have some strange typos on some of them. This one right here. I don't know what was going on there. Fix that. Okay, so we've got all our images exported. Now we've got to go into Stencil and add them all in. So we've done the idle right. Go ahead and do the idle left. Make sure our scale is set to 1. So now I got to find the Nike-L, add it, and remove the first frame. Now we'll go ahead and do our walk right. So you see here the different frames to create the animation. We'll go ahead and start with our right clockwise 90. And that one. And then go through pursuit and our right clockwise. Oh, actually 45's first. So let's select it and move it back. Start 45 and 90. And next is 135. It's 180. 225. 270. 315. And if we're continuing the motion, I want to have one that's back at normal. Right there. So that he's doing a full circle. He doesn't skip over this. Next thing I want to do is remove all these other frames. And now you can see the motion here on the right hand side. Now what I probably want to do, and this is up to your preference, is speed it up a little bit. So I'll double click on each one of these and switch them to 50 milliseconds. I'm doing this, switching it. And the last one. And you see he's rolling a lot faster now. Now I just have to do the same thing on the left side here. Start with the 45. Okay, now we've got the left and the right action. Now we'll switch over to the jumping right. Now before this was just a single frame, we're going to go ahead and make it 2 frames. So we'll take the bounce right, add that one, and then we'll add a second frame for where he's all stretched out. Add that. Let's remove this first frame. Now you'll notice he's just kind of moving back and forth because he's doing a loop here. So we'll take that loop off, and then we'll do the same thing on the left side. First one, turn the loop off, and we'll go ahead and save it. Now our character's been saved. We should be able to jump back into the scene, and we'll test the scene. So now you see he does the rolling action. He just does jumping. Now one thing we'll look at is, notice he stays squatted. So we'll have to get into the code to fix some of that. So let's jump to the dashboard, go to our actor behaviors, and let's look at the jumping behavior. So when we create the jumping behavior, we set this variable on the ground equal to false, because when we first create it, he may not be on the ground. Then that's when that jumping behavior is created. As it's updated, this means this is running all the time. It just keeps running over and over again. So when it's updating, this section of the code will look at the jump. This section of the code will look at switching the jumping animation. So let's take a look at this first part. So if the jump key is pressed and the actor, their on the ground variable is set to true, so if the jump key is pressed and they're on the ground, play the jump sound, start pushing the actor or move the actor in the negative Y direction, that means up, at whatever we have our jump force set to. So play the sound, move him, then after 0.075 seconds, if we're still alive, set our actor on the ground equal to false. So this will, and there's a comment to kind of let you know what they're thinking. Give the actor a chance to get off the ground. So that'll only happen if the jump key's pressed and the actor's on the ground. Now, the other part of this, which is going to run, is switching the jump animation. So this checks, is the actor on the ground? If that's false. So if they're not on the ground and they're facing right, if that's set to true, switch the animation to jump right. And then we notice this thing here. Switch the frame to 0 for the self. And then this is obviously the otherwise of this part. So if they're not facing right, switch it to the left jump animation and switch the frame to 0. So if you remember, in our jump animation we had frame 0 and frame 1. So it's always setting it to frame 0. So what we'll do is we'll take this part and we'll throw it up here in the trash. Sometimes it's hard to actually get it into the trash. You may need to shrink or this this toolbox here, or move things over. And then let's get rid of this one as well. So now we've just switched to the jumping animation and we haven't forced it to frame 0. Let's go ahead and save. We'll switch back to level 1 and we'll test the scene. Okay, let me move it in here so you can see it. So we're going. Now let's try the jump. There we go. Now we can see his animation is looks correct. However, you see he starts squatting when we're already in the air, right? Because if we've taken a look at it, it doesn't do this till the on the ground variable is set to false. That doesn't happen till 0.075 seconds after we've actually hit the button. So let's see if we can fix that. What we're going to want to do is set the jump animation right at the beginning, as soon as this is pressed. So let's see if we can grab this. And this is, if they're facing right, set it to jump right, otherwise set it to jump left. We're going to grab this whole thing, and we're going to drop it in right up here, before we even play the sound, before we even start moving them up, and all that stuff. Now this part we don't need anymore, so we'll go ahead and just throw that in the garbage. The other thing we're probably going to want to do is, we probably don't want to play the sound or push ourselves up till we've, given ourselves a chance to do the squatting. So you can right click on this. So this one's due after a certain amount of time. So let's right click and duplicate that. Okay, now here's an interesting part. It grabs the whole thing. So what we'll want to do is, let's grab it from the comment. Just left click. We can grab it. Grab that part. I think it's grabbing the part underneath it. Let's see if we can move it over. It can be hard to grab these things. Let me undo this. That's not what I wanted. Sometimes it helps moving it off to the right. I'm going to grab the comments. Let's grab the comments, separate it out. Let's put it here on top of this section. That's what we want. Now, let's take this. We'll throw all this in the garbage. We don't need any of that stuff. Now what we want to do is have this right up here. So let's dump it in there. Now after 0.7, we don't want to set this to false anymore. That's something else. So let's move that away, and then let's drag that to the garbage can. Where did it go? Undo. Sometimes it's easier to undo than anything else. Okay, put that in the garbage can. To do undo, I'm just doing Control-Z. So after some time, let's not mess with this, is alive figure. There's so many of those checks. There, throw that in the garbage. So after some time, and our first animation was set to 0.1 millisecond. We want to play the sound and push them. Actually, this whole rest of it. Put it in there. Let's get that play. So after 1 second, go ahead and play the sound, start moving them up, and then after another 0.075 seconds, set them to not be on the ground anymore. Okay, this looks pretty promising. So we'll save it. There is something else we're going to have to do, but let's go ahead and check what it looks like. So we'll test the scene. Move it in here so you can see it. Okay, move right, move left. Let's try a jump. Okay, now you'll notice he's not doing anything. Let's try moving right. So moving left and right, he rolls, but it's as if he's still on the ground the whole time. So let's take a look at that. Everything here looks pretty good, but you'll notice we don't actually set him to off the ground till 0.175 seconds later. Let's go back to our dashboard. Let's look at our walking behavior. So when you create the walking behavior, we set ourselves always active, and we set our facing right value to true. On the update part, so this is where we're walking right, and you'll see here, set the speed, set them facing right to true, and then if we're on the ground, switch the animation to walking right, and then walking left if we're on the ground, switch the animation to walking left, and then if we're not walking left or right, set our speed to 0, and if we're on the ground and if we're facing right, switch our animation to idle right and idle left. So what's happening is our jump animation conflicts with the walking animation and idle animation that's set right here. So we're going to want to know, when are we starting to jump? So let's create a new variable, and so we'll just duplicate this. That was probably the easiest way. Let me actually move it out of here, and now I'll duplicate it, and I'll put this one back. I've got this other one here. So as soon as the jump key's pressed, we're going to want to set a new variable. So let's put that in here. Set the active variable. Let's call it isJumping. So I'll say isJumping, and instead of false, Or let's get rid of this false. We'll throw that in the garbage. And you can, there's several ways to do this. You can duplicate a true. You can grab a true from here. You can also select the drop down, switch to Boolean comparisons, and select true right there. So we'll set the value is jumping to true. Now once they're off the ground, right over here, we can probably go ahead and turn this back off and set it to not jumping anymore. So let's move this out, right click, duplicate, put it back in, this back in. So let's set our is jumping variable to false. So from this point on, all the way to here, we are jumping. Now we'll use this over in our walking animation. So let's go over here. So when we're standing still, if the actor's on the ground, and we want to also check that they're not jumping. So let me grab this, move it out of here, so we can do a little bit of work. We're going to want to grab this and check here. So let's put that in there. So we're going to want to check, are they on the ground and are they not jumping? So now, let's see a little bit. I'm going to right click on here, duplicate this. So now we've got, should have two of them. There they are. So is the actor on the ground and is jumping? And we're going to want that to be, let's throw that in the garbage. We're going to want that to be false. So Boolean comparison false. So let's put this back in over here. So if the actor is not jumping, that's set to false, and if they are on the ground, then go ahead and do this animation. Otherwise, don't set this. Now, you noticed when we were jumping and moving at the same time, it switched to the walking left animation, the walking right animation. You can do the same thing here if you want, so that you keep the jumping right, jumping left. That's really up to you. Let's see what it looks like. And then as you're playing around with it, you can try both and see which you like better. And this is where it really comes up to you, designing your own game, what you want it to look like. Okay, let me move here, bring it to the front. Where did it go? There we go. So I'm moving left, right, moving left. Oh, looks like we have another bug. It doesn't stop. So let's try to jump. Okay. So you see now he stays stretched out. When he moves though, if he's moving while he's jumping, it stays in a roll. So we got a couple things. So that, and then also at the very beginning. So probably when the jump is created, we need to set is jumping to false. So let's go ahead and add this, and is jumping. We'll set that to false. Let's see if that fixes our initial issue here. So move right, move left. Yeah, now he actually goes back to idling, and then the jumping. So this is the part that's really up to you. If you want him to look like he's still rolling, or if you want him to look like he's bouncing. But it looks like now the squat and the jump, that all happens about where we want it. Now some of the other things we could have done were over here. We have that idle character. Pull it up. This one right here, where he looks kind of upset that he's been idling too long. There's a couple different ways to do it. One of the ways is if you look here at the time options, you can do something every second. So you could, in the walking over here, you could just have it down here. Every second, track a variable that shows like a game counter or something. And then here within the standing still, as soon as you're standing still, set your idle time or so to whenever you started standing still. And then just check if the difference between our game counter and when we started standing still is greater than 5 seconds or so, than 5, you'd want to switch the animation to the other idle. I'm not going to go through it, but give you something to try and play around with on your own. That's about it. I hope you enjoyed bringing our character in. Feel free to work on creating other characters that you want and bring them in as well. Thank you.